High availability. CA EEM high availability configuration on Linux. In this module, we will learn how to configure CA EEM in failover mode for high availability on Linux. Prerequisites and considerations. Before start the CA EEM failover configuration, synchronize the system time of all servers in the failover setup. Verify that all CA EEM servers are configured in the same security mode, non-FIPS or FIPS only. Verify that DNS lookup resolves host names of all the servers in the failover setup. For more information, refer to the CA EEM documentation. In this video, we will demonstrate the setup of a failover environment for CA EEM to achieve high availability on Linux. For this demonstration, we have CA EEM already installed on two servers, running standalone. The first server is the EEM PRI. This server will be the CA EEM primary server. And the second server is the EEM SEC. This server will be the CA EEM secondary server. On each of them, we currently have the CA EEM running. Here we have the gateway running on the EEM PRI. And there we see the gateway running in the EEM SEC. We have logged into the CA EEM on EEM PRI server. And we have logged into the EEM SEC server. We have the two CA EEMs running. So now let's do the configuration of the CA EEM in failover. We go to the primary server. Before starting the failover configuration process, you must synchronize the system time of all servers in the failover configuration. Verify that all CA EEM servers are configured in the same security mode, non-FIPS or FIPS only. Verify that the DNS lookup resolves the host names of all servers in the failover setup. Let's begin by setting up some environment variables. We set up the home directory variable for the CA EEM and set up the Java home directory variable and include the Java JRE bin directory in the path variable. This step will also be performed on the secondary server. We go to the secondary server. We set up the home directory variable for the CA EEM and the Java home directory variable and include the Java JRE bin directory in the path variable. The environment variables have been set up on both servers. Let's configure the failover now. We go back to the primary server and go to the CEM bin directory and execute the following command: java jar eeam cluster setup.jar. We answer yes. Press enter. We enter the command reset primary. We press enter to accept the default port. We select option 1 to choose internal failover. Option 2 is to use an external load balancer or reverse proxy. The summary appears. We will configure this server as the primary failover node. We answer yes. It is recommended to back up the configuration and data store before starting this procedure. The configuration process is executed. We enter now the status command. We confirm that both services have started. We completed the configuration for the primary server. Now we must configure the secondary server. We enter the add option and the secondary server's hostname and press enter to use the default port. The summary appears. It shows we are going to include the secondary server in the failover. We answer yes, and the configuration begins. Again, it is recommended to back up the configuration and data store before starting this procedure. The configuration is completed. We have included the secondary server in the failover configuration. We enter the status command, and we can see both services have started. Exit the program. We have completed the failover configuration on the primary server. Now we configure it on the secondary server. We go to the secondary server. Let's go to the CA EEM bin directory and execute the command java jar EEM cluster setup.jar, but this time we include the primary server as a parameter. We enter the IAM user password. We answer yes to continue. And we enter the sync command to synchronize the databases. Sync is an option of the EEM cluster setup tool that synchronizes the configuration of the primary server with the secondary server in the failover environment. This option is available only when you run the tool on the secondary server. We need to provide which is the current server. We enter option 2 for the secondary. Since it's the first time we do this synchronization, we enter 1. We get a message that the secondary is going to be synchronized with the primary server. Again, it is recommended to back up the configuration and data store before starting this procedure. We answer yes, and the configuration begins. And the synchronization was successful. With this, we have configured the secondary server. Now we are going to validate that the configuration was done correctly. On the primary server, we execute again the command java jar EEM cluster setup.jar. We answer yes and enter the list command. It presents a summary of the failover nodes with the primary node and the secondary node. With this, we have confirmed the failover is properly set up. We exit the program. Now we go to the secondary to execute the same command. We answer yes and enter the list command. We get the summary with the list of failover nodes, with the primary and secondary nodes. We exit the program. We have confirmed the failover is properly set up on the secondary. Now we are going to do some validations. First, we are going to log into the primary CA EEM, the EMPRI with the admin user. Now, we log into the secondary CA EEM with the admin user. We have logged into secondary. We go back to the primary. We are going to list all the users that we have defined in primary. These are all the users. Let's go to the secondary server, and we will do the same. These are all the users we have in the secondary. We go back to the primary. And we are going to create a new user. Let's call it U-P or I-1. We enter the password for the user. We save it. Let's check if it has been created. And here we have it created in the primary. Now we go to the secondary server. We are going to check if the user that we created in the primary can be seen in the secondary. And yes, it appears here in the secondary. It means that both databases are synchronizing. Now we will do the opposite. On the secondary, we are going to create a user. We are going to call it U-SEC-1. We enter the password for the user and save it. Let's check if this user appears in the secondary server. The user we just created appears in the secondary. Now we go to the primary and check that it is also there. The user created in the secondary server also appears here in the primary. With this, we have confirmed that the configuration is correct and that the databases are synchronizing accordingly. We have completed the CA EEM failover configuration for high availability on the Linux platform. In this module, we have learned how to configure CA EEM failover for high availability on Linux. The EEM cluster setup tool is used to configure the failover. The failover setup is done by following these steps. Configure the primary server. Add the secondary server to the primary server. And synchronize the secondary server with the primary server.